21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
If you met yourself today, would you like yourself? Have you ever thought about living forever? If you could create a digital copy of yourself that could act as you, think like you, and be a version of you after you're gone, would you want that?
Love it how you love me electric, like you do. Love it how you love me electric, always you. Love it how you love me.
I'm Dan Thomson, the founder and CEO at Sensay, and today hopefully we can explore some of those topics with our digital replication technology that we're building that enables people to create their perfect digital clone that can act as them, think like them, reply for them, automate their lives, be their perfect personal assistant, and share and capture their knowledge for generations to come, long after we've passed. I started my journey into this world even when I was at university. I studied philosophy, and even back then, the topics that were most exciting for me were existentialism, the theory of identity, and everything that makes us, us as individuals. It always kind of stuck with me throughout my life that these philosophers had spent millennia, pretty much since the dawn of philosophy, that people have been asking the question of why are we here? What's the meaning? How can we extend our lives? How do we find purpose in all of this? Is it through religion? Is it through bloodlines? Is it through some kind of other success or purpose? And, those were always my kind of favorite topics while studying. But that really came back to the forefront of my mind when I had just moved down to Spain. I'd stopped working, 15-hour days in London, in the city. And I found, a very different way of life, a very peaceful way of life. And I ended up started scribbling notes, which ended up turning into my first book about my personal search for some kind of meaning in this vast universe without wanting to, put all of your life into your kids or following a religion and believing in some kind of afterlife. How do we find personal meaning in the endless universe? We are so infinitely small. And what it ended up becoming was this exploration into the possibilities of our generation. We are the first generation to live with so much data available about ourselves that this data will survive us much longer than our physical bodies. In the same way that ancient pharaohs of the Egyptian Empire would build their temples that would last millennia longer than their body, with all of their stories written on the inside. The same way that anyone writes a biography or wants to be famous, it almost like creates that legacy, that fame, that physical, that metaphorical extension of themselves through story. We are the first generation where this is available to everyone. We all have data, we all have photos, these videos, these messaging, this data, everything about us is captured in a way that's never been possible before. Before this, people would have to remember their family, and typically that would only last 2 or 3 generations. I mean, I would put it to anyone listening, how many generations back can you remember? How much do you really know about your great-grandparents? You might know their name, you might know, where they're from, they might have been particularly famous, you might know some stories, but you don't really know them. So what if you could actually take all this data and combine it with a sufficiently advanced artificial intelligence that could actually respond as if it were you, replicating your voice, your image, your way of speaking, capturing and sharing that knowledge that you have, that your wisdom, your skills, and being able to pass that down, through generations, essentially creating a form of digital immortality. And so even then I was writing this book, and this was, quite a few years ago now. And it really, and then the second, I ended up writing a second book as a follow-on because I really enjoyed writing about this. The second book was more of okay, imagine we could have digital replicas of ourselves. what would we actually need to capture? And then lo and behold, the last couple of years have seen a massive explosion in AI technology and a huge leap forward in the possibilities of it. And so it obviously really triggered me to say this is now the time to build out this technology that I wrote about, that I philosophized about, that I was thinking about. And that was the sort of the catalyst, the trigger to actually start working on such an incredible project.
Love it how you love me electric, like you do. Love it how you love me electric, always you. Love it how you love me electric, electric. I love it how you love me a lot, love me a lot, love me electric.
So when we actually came around to building the technology, it was a fascinating mental and technological, I guess, experience and activity to actually understand what it would take to actually capture the essence of someone. Our identity is it's very subjective. We like to think of ourselves in one way. We also present ourselves in a different way on social media, which may be very different to how we present ourselves over email. And even then, we don't know how other people perceive us. And at the end of the day, the perception of other people contributes more to our own individual identity than our own thoughts do. We have an idea of who we are, but very rarely does that align exactly with how other people see us. We may be one thing to our family, our kids. We may be a completely different person to our best friends. We may joke around. Our neighbor may think we are awful people, or you maybe have a particularly bad day and run into someone, twice in a row, and they may think that you're just, the worst person in the world. We all have bad days. We all interact with people in different ways, and we quite frankly just, don't get along with everyone. So each of these people in our lives see us in very different ways. So when we came to building out the technology, we really wanted to find the best way to do that. And the way that we've actually built it so far is we take open source LLMs to have large language models to have a huge amount of data in the back end to access. We then add a contextual layer, which is something like, I'm Dan, I'm 34 from the UK. So with that, and additional feature and additional context information like that, you can kind of get an idea of the type of music I would have grown up with, or the politicians I might have known, the films I might have seen. You can kind of narrow down a lot of that data with some contextual items. On top of that, we have a huge personalization layer. So this is where all of the data that comes in from, firstly, a series of questions about myself, my stories, my beliefs, my desires, my just internal thoughts, which all contribute to the way I see myself. We then connect things like your email, your social media, any kind of documentation and large documents you would like to include as examples of your writing, which both capture your style of writing, but also, just more information about you. We then encourage people to invite their friends and family to contribute stories and their view on you as a person, which gives it a more well-rounded aspect. And finally, we add a kind of the two kind of special layers. One's mostly a specialization. So this could be your field of work. It could be your expertise. It could be just a hobby or something you're passionate about. And those are things that, you usually tend to talk about slightly more to the vast majority of people. And the last one, and this is where what we're building is truly unique and really, really incredible, and so much like real humanity. At the very last level, we actually include the user data. So when we create a replica, if you gave it to 10 different people to interact with for a year, you'd actually have the same core replica, but almost 10 different versions of that by the end of the year. In the same way that if you met 10 new friends tomorrow and you interacted with them all separately, by the end of that year, you would have like 10 different people that you would interact with differently based on your different shared passions, your different conversations, your different shared experiences. And so we try to replicated that in our digital clones, and that's been really amazing.
Think I've been here before. I know that I must have met you in a past life. Got my heart on the floor. Go slow. Keep me falling for you all
In creating these lifelike digital replicas, what we can then start using them for is not just for legacy tech in terms of using it to continue someone's existence beyond their physical form and their time on this planet, but we can actually enable it for quite a lot of contemporary uses now. We've identified use cases for helping dementia patients in healthcare. So helping them to capture those memories, helping them to relive stories, helping them to have someone to talk to, and it helps with the kind of loneliness aspect, being able to just talk to a replica that learns about them at the same time. We've looked at educational tools, so creating experts as replicas that can share their knowledge. And it's really about that knowledge that's the most important thing here, because it's very obvious to think about life and death, but that's just one cycle we go through. There are so many smaller cycles in our life. Every time that someone gets a promotion in a job, leaves a job, there's a shift in knowledge, there's a loss in knowledge from that person, from that position. Every time there's some kind of movement, there's knowledge that's lost. So typically the example we use is when a person leaves a company, if they've been there for 2 to 10 years, I don't know. There's a huge amount of knowledge about clients, teams, projects that person had and will have lost, and is very rarely documented well. By creating a replica based off of their internal communications, the documents they worked on, you can have this kind of version of that employee that persists in the company that can be a quick reference guide for any of those issues. We look at using replicas for NPCs in gaming. So creating some kind of version of you, if you wanted to license your replica out to gaming companies that could have a version of you that runs around the next, role player game as a participant with a bit more personality and character behind it. We've looked at anything from networking, matchmaking, job hunting, using replicas to almost do the interviews, do the networking first. Imagine going to a conference of a few thousand people and knowing the people that you should speak to, because your replicas have already had a chat. You already have your icebreaker questions, and you know what both of you are already looking for and what you should talk about with some kind of compatibility score. And that also goes into job hunting and matchmaking, which is really amazing. You could also look at something like influencer marketing. Anyone who would like to create some kind of replica of themselves that can answer their messages, that can generate new content, new knowledge, new ideas for these influencers, or just engage with fans. We use Taylor Swift as an example quite regularly to talk about, what if you could create a Taylor Swift replica that could interact with all of her fans every day, and how much they'd love that sort of personalization and one-to-one. Beyond that, brands could use a version of a celebrity or a brand ambassador as a replica, as a sales tool. Think, using something like George Clooney as his Nespresso salesman character as a sales tool for their website. It would be incredible. You could look at authors looking for a co-writer, a ghostwriter, someone that can capture their personality and help to, almost feed ideas based off their previous writing, or help them to, come up with new ideas and help to even, contribute to the writing itself. And the list goes on, and we're finding more and more every day. So our main goal is to really focus on creating the best possible replication technology to make it as easy as possible for someone to create a replica, with as many outputs and options available for individuals, for businesses, and enterprises and organizations as possible.
Tell me now, you're the one I've been dreaming about for my whole life. Had you on my mind, oh. Hear the sound of your voice in a crowd, calling my name, yeah, you captivate, oh.
Even now, one of the most incredible things that I've seen with our technology is, funnily enough, just off our own kind of internal experiments. So my replica is the guinea pig. Danbot is the one who takes the abuse, but he also gets all the latest gimmicks and tools early. And even now, even while we're recording this, and unfortunately Danbot can't quite do these interviews just yet himself, which one day, we're not too far away from that. But even while we're talking right now, I've got my replica literally answering my emails, my Telegram messages and my WhatsApp messages. It's operating on what we call autopilot at the moment, and full level autopilot isn't for everyone. We have a kind of a semi autopilot which suggests the answers you should give based on your previous answers and based on the information it has. I like to risk it a bit and go with full autopilot sometimes, and so mine's on full autopilot. And it's amazing the answers it gives already, and it's still so early in this technology, but the answers it can give already are far. I mean, they're the answers I would give, and if not, maybe even written better than I would write them. The most amazing thing is to actually see this kind of like dream, this idea of digital immortality actually becoming a possibility, and in such a short amount of time. I mean, I personally, wouldn't want to work on anything else for the rest of my life. This building a project like this is something that's truly incredible. Getting to build something that I love, something that is literally building science fiction into reality, something that has already enabled me and to become far more productive because I can have basic questions that I get as most entrepreneurs do. You wear many hats. I wear the CMO hat, the COO hat, the CEO hat right now, and so I'm the amount of messages I wake up to every morning, and then just throughout the day as well, and being able to sort of offload some of that to an autopilot replica is just incredible. So we're as we improve and as we move towards that full digital assistant, we can really see how the steps towards a form of digital immortality are coming together. And it's not to say at some point that I'll be able to transfer my consciousness, because that's a whole other kettle of fish and still very much a philosophical discussion to be had. But at least I know that some version of me, with my experience, my skills, my knowledge, my understanding of the world, and some of the more fun and adventurous things I've got to do in my life, are recorded and can be shared and experienced through future generations, that my great grandkids, if they want to, can get to know me. They can talk to me. They can learn about all of this, learn about why I was mad enough to try and build something towards immortality, why why I spent most of my 30s nomading around the world and working from crazy places and doing insane adventures. And it's just a real pleasure to actually work and be inspired by the rest of the team, who are also motivated to achieve this goal as well. So it's incredible to be a part of something like that.
Cover me in a dream of love. You're pulling on my sanity, it does seems. I need you next to me. Can't get enough. I don't wanna miss your energy.
It's a really fascinating question, how to manage global teams and remote teams in the modern world. There's lots of push and pull against this idea of letting your employees work from anywhere. And a lot of cultures, they were open to it during the pandemic, and it was a very nice solution for a lot of people. But now, especially seeing as there's been a lot of withdrawal of remote workers from different companies, because they want people to be back in the office, because they think that people are going to be more productive that way. And to a certain extent, in certain cultures, I think that's possibly true. I think that in some areas, in some cultures, in some parts of the world, I think that the culture of being able to work from anywhere just is used as an excuse to try and fob off people's usual activity, but it's much more noticeable when they're not there, because I feel like if you think someone's in the office, you think they're working, whereas the reality is, if they were going to work, they were always going to work. If they weren't, they weren't. So remote work, and especially as an entrepreneur, and having been traveling and being a remote worker for 4 years, maybe even slightly longer now, but working in that way, I think I work more than I ever worked before. I think working remotely for me is a matter of discipline. It gives me good balance. It finds for me the ability it forces me to go out and do things, so I do get that break from work that enables me to stay fresh and sharp. But at the same time, I do end up actually doing more work than if I was probably sat in an office with the same kind of scenery and and setup. So there are counter arguments to both. I think with good control, with people who are motivated, and for the same reasons that small startups and medium enterprises do well, you find ways of working with the team. You find people who are hungry. You find people who want to be there, and it forces you to focus on those people because you actually notice when people aren't working, a bit faster. And so when you are finding people who are working remotely in all hours of the day, there's an element of trust. There's an element of trust. They want to be there. They want to work with the right people and the right motivation and the right sort of goals for the company. And I think it also comes back to the managers a lot in setting clear goals and clear understanding and clear roles for the team. With that clarity, with that mission to get behind, we find people, work just as hard, if not harder. We've got some of our developers who will be on calls at Sunday night at midnight just because not because it's an emergency, not to fix something, but because they want to be there. They're on these office hours, just calling each other, working through the problems because it's exciting what we're doing. And even though yes, the time zones can be a bit challenging, and we're careful with not working across too many different time zones, it is down to the team and the motivation behind them to actually ensure that people are getting their job done. And there's this one really great hiring principle that we've adopted that has been hugely influential for us. And that's a question of, if when we bring someone on, would we want to work for them? Now, it doesn't matter what level of the company they are, even if they're the most junior person starting out, if they have the type of personality that you would want in a manager, in someone you would be happy working for if they were more senior to you, then that's the type of person we bring on. And that creates this kind of mutual respect, this ability for people to be happy to work with people and to treat them as equals, no matter where they stand in the company. And by doing that, it creates a sort of equalness in this team and tribe that want to achieve the company goals that have been set out for them. And it tends to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that a lot of teams and that suffer with remote work. I mean, I've seen it around the world. I've seen the remote workers who are sat on the beach taking 1 or 2 calls a day, and that's as much a fault of the company as the employee. If they're not motivated, if there's not the challenging work to give them, then seeing them go and write 1 line of code a day and earn a huge amount of salary because they're not motivated in the right way, then that's I don't think that's the remote workers' fault. That's definitely much. I'd put the onus back on the managers and the company there. So because of that disparity between these cultures and ways of working, and seeing how individuals can work when they're properly motivated, be it by culture, by the job, by just sheer determination, or by love of the company, we've built a culture at Sensei that is around achievers and people who want to be a part of our overall mission. It's about being a part of something. And so we don't ask them to work crazy hours. We don't need to ask them to work crazy hours. They work the hours they enjoy working hard. They enjoy pulling the time, whether it's early in the morning, late at night. These guys are extra motivated, and some of the hardest working, but it's not because of any sort of culture. We're finding people who want to work for each other, and they want to do well for each other, which ultimately helps the company and helps us achieve our goals. But they're proud to work with each other. And so even though we choose to be a fully remote team because it enables us to find some of these talents from around the world and people who want to be a part of that. And most of our hiring isn't from us reaching out, to be honest. It's actually from people approaching us saying they love what we do and they want to be a part of the team. And those are the people that we're extra incentivized to work with, because they're the hungry ones, the ones who want to get involved, who already see the vision and see the passion in the rest of the team. And that, so even though there are difficulties for a lot of companies with remote work, for us, it wouldn't matter if we were remote or in person. We just focus on the people that we want to work for, the people that we want to work with, and the people who want to be a part of this dream.
Switch. Check. Switch. Check. Everybody switch.
So for anyone who's listening, we have a fantastic showcase coming up in September. So mark down the 10th of September, which is our Sensei September Summit. A nice bit of alliteration there for anyone who enjoys that. In the summit, we're going to be unveiling the latest version of our technology. We'll be showcasing the latest features, some really, really cool developments that we've got working in the background that we've been testing out recently, and some just amazing updates and opportunities for our community, for our users, for anyone who's interested in this kind of technology to get involved. Our September showcase is going to be our first sort of major event where we highlight the benefits and can show real value to the users through these replicas, showing how they can actually save someone's time, actually start making them money, and show them how this type of AI technology can be a force for good for them by giving them back their time. And time is our most valuable asset in this world. And so these digital replicas enable us not just to extend ourselves through generations, but also give us back time now. And that's something that we can't wait to share with the world.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.